What if the United States took control of Greenland by force? Imagine a world where diplomacy is cast aside, global alliances fracture, and the icy expanse of Greenland becomes the epicenter of an unprecedented geopolitical conflict. It's a scenario almost too extreme to fathom. What if the United States, driven by strategic ambition and resource greed, decided to seize Greenland by force? This chilling proposition raises profound questions about ethics, sovereignty, global alliances, and the fragile balance of power that defines our world today. In this exploration, we'll dive deep into the significance of Greenland, unravel the immediate and long-term consequences of such a bold and aggressive move, and challenge you to consider how this hypothetical act might redefine global geopolitics. At first glance, Greenland might seem like an unlikely focus for international conflict. With its vast icy tundra, a population of just over 56,000, and isolation from the world's major urban centers, you could be forgiven for overlooking its strategic importance. But beneath its frozen expanse lies incredible potential. Greenland holds vast stores of untapped resources, rare earth minerals vital for modern technology, oil and gas deposits that grow more accessible due to melting ice and freshwater reserves. Additionally, Greenland's geographic position makes it a linchpin in the Arctic. As climate change opens up new shipping lanes in the Arctic Ocean, Greenland stands as a gateway to controlling these vital trade routes. Militarily, it offers unparalleled positioning for surveillance and deterrence in the Northern Hemisphere. It's no surprise the United States has long had its eyes on Greenland, from President Truman's 1946 offer to buy the territory from Denmark to more recent overtures by the Trump administration. Now imagine these strategic interests cascading into a dramatic decision. The U.S. decides it can't risk losing Greenland's advantages to other global powers like Russia or China. Frustrated by diplomatic impasses, it chooses force over negotiation. Let's set the scene. Diplomatic efforts to strike a deal for Greenland's resources fail. Denmark, bound by its relationship with Greenland as an autonomous territory, refuses to entertain any offers. At the same time, pressure from rival global powers like Russia and China intensifies, threatening U.S. dominance in the Arctic. With its back to the wall, the United States decides to act unilaterally. Under this hypothetical, American forces launch a calculated strike to seize control of Greenland. Whether it begins with soft aggression in the form of increased military presence or outright invasion, the result is the same. The U.S. asserts its dominion. Greenland's small population is stunned, Denmark is thrown into disarray, and the world watches anxiously as a close ally becomes an aggressor. The questions start to erupt almost instantly. What justifications could the United States present? Would the government frame this takeover as a matter of national security, resource preservation, or long-term global strategic need? The immediate fallout of a forced takeover of Greenland would be catastrophic for U.S. relations with Europe. Denmark, one of America's closest allies and a NATO member, would be outraged. This act of aggression wouldn't just hurt bilateral relations, it would strike at the very heart of NATO itself. If the United States unilaterally attacked another member state's territory, the alliance's foundational principle of collective defense would be thrown into question. Would NATO's members rally behind Denmark in solidarity, risking a direct confrontation with the United States? Or would the alliance fracture under the pressure, with members divided between condemning the U.S. and turning a blind eye to preserve their own ties? Either way, its credibility as a collective defense pact would be left hanging by a thread. Denmark itself would likely seek recourse from the EU, which would surely issue strong condemnations of American aggression. Trade sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and a rallying cry for European unity against U.S. dominance would follow. Transatlantic relations, the bedrock of American foreign policy for decades, would be deeply shaken, perhaps irreparably. Meanwhile, Greenland's indigenous residents, already unprepared for such an assault, could only look on in horror. What would happen to their autonomy, their sovereignty, their identity? Resistance, displacement, and even potential violence against occupiers would be inevitable. For Greenlanders, the question of whether they are a pawn in a larger geopolitical game would feel all too real. This hypothetical act wouldn't occur in a vacuum. Beyond Europe, the world's other superpowers would take notice and act. China, which has invested heavily in Greenland's mining resources and sees itself as a rising power in the Arctic, would interpret the U.S. invasion as a clear sign of American expansionism. Tensions over the Pacific and Arctic could heighten dramatically, leading to direct military posturing or new rivalries in contested regions. And then there's Russia, already pursuing an aggressive Arctic strategy with new bases, icebreaker ships, and territorial expansions. Russia could use this moment as an opportunity. If the U.S. can unilaterally seize Greenland, what's to stop Russia from claiming the rest of the Arctic for itself? With such a precedent set, the domino effect across the globe could see military conflicts erupting over contested territories. The Arctic Council, a coalition of nations devoted to cooperative governance and sustainable development in the region, would be paralyzed. Trust between members would collapse, and the fragile understandings that keep such a volatile region in balance would be shattered. This would push the world into a new era of great power competition, where might makes right and diplomacy is the greatest casualty. The fallout wouldn't just be global. It would strike directly at the heart of American society. In Congress, fierce debates would break out. Some members might defend the action, citing national security imperatives or casting Greenland's capture as a necessary step in competing with China and Russia. Others, however, would condemn the operation as a betrayal of America's democratic values and an unnecessary provocation that could destabilize the world. Public opinion would likely skew toward outrage. For a country built on the principles of liberty and sovereignty, such an aggressive takeover would seem hypocritical, undermining the very ideals the United States claims to promote. Protests would fill the streets, media outlets would lambaste the administration's choices, and questions about where America is headed as a global leader would dominate public discourse. Even within the military, divisions might arise. Would service members and leaders question the morality of such an order? Could this create splits within the ranks regarding loyalty and the ethics of the mission? The consequences for national unity would be dire, leaving wounds that could fester for years, if not decades. Beyond the immediate chaos, this hypothetical scenario raises critical questions about the future of the international order. If the United States can annex Greenland by force, what does this say about the durability of sovereign rights in the face of superpowers? Does this signal the full embrace of realpolitik, where might determines right and alliances become mere tools of convenience? Such a move would make aggressive land grabs more acceptable around the world. Countries like Russia and China might feel entitled to pursue similar actions, starting a dangerous spiral of militarized territorial disputes. Smaller nations and regions, already struggling to maintain their autonomy in the shadow of global powers, would feel more vulnerable than ever. And what of America's place in the world? Would its allies still trust it to uphold international norms and democratic principles? Would its enemies grow bolder, sensing that even the world's most powerful democracy is willing to act unilaterally without regard for what's just or lawful? The idea of the United States forcibly taking control of Greenland might seem far-fetched, but it offers a lens through which to examine the fragility of today's global order. Such a scenario exposes the ethical dilemmas, strategic tensions, and potential dangers that would arise if superpowers abandoned diplomacy entirely and pursued their goals through brute force. This is more than just a what-if story. It is an urgent invitation for political analysts, policymakers, and citizens alike to confront the big questions about sovereignty, power, and the future of international relations. If nothing else, let this debate begin as a thought experiment and serve as a stark warning of the complex consequences that come with unchecked ambition. The ice-covered landmass of Greenland remains still, but the questions of power it inspires are anything but. Would the United States dare? Could the world endure? It's time to think deeply, debate passionately, and understand fully what's at stake. Like and subscribe for more from History Twist.